So in this lesson, I want to teach you all about tofu. Now, a lot of people think that tofu is really gross. And you know what? The first time I had tofu, I thought it was pretty gross too. But that's because the person that served it to me pretty much just cut it up, threw it in to whatever it was that they made, and didn't really do anything else with it. So it tasted like nothing. The key to tofu is marinating it. If you're going to replace it in meat, in a stir fry or something like that, it needs to be marinated first. You can't just throw it in and expect it to taste good, because really it tastes like nothing until you do something with it. There are two different kinds of tofu, silken tofu and regular tofu. Silken tofu is found on the shelves in the grocery store because it doesn't require refrigeration. It's kept in what's called aseptic packaging, and it lasts for quite a long time. Usually when I buy silken tofu, it lasts for about 6 months from the time that I purchased it. Silken tofu is one of those things that is great to replace creams in dips or in creamy sauces. It's also great to replace eggs because it does have a soft consistency to it. So it's very easy to throw in a food processor or a blender and puree it. Now, you can use the different forms of silken tofu for grilling, but I prefer not to because I find it has sort of a snot-like consistency to it, for lack of better words. I prefer to use the regular tofu when it comes to meat replacements. There are 3 different kinds of silken tofu. They're soft, firm, and extra firm, and I'm going to show you 3 different recipes to show how to use each of these 3 different kinds of silken tofu. Unlike silken tofu, regular tofu does need to be refrigerated, so you'll find it in the fridges of your grocery store. Now, it also comes in 3 different consistencies. It comes in medium firm, firm, and extra firm. Medium firm is a little bit on the soft side, so I usually use that to puree and use as an egg replacement. With the firm, again, I like to use this as an egg replacement, but it can also be used as a meat replacement. Same goes for the extra firm. It's got a very meaty texture to it, and again, once you marinate it, it can be fabulous as a meat replacement. These days, a lot of companies are also coming out with pre-marinated tofu, so you don't have to bother with marinating it before you use it. There are lots of companies now that are coming out with all sorts of different flavors that the tofu is marinated in, which makes it so much easier to use. So now that you know what all the different kinds of tofu are, I'm going to show you 6 different recipes using each kind of tofu so that I can show you how I use tofu in my kitchen. So the first tofu that I'm going to work with is soft silken tofu. Now, this is the one that I like to use for dips, for sauces. Even desserts can often be used with this soft tofu. So this is a simple spinach dip recipe. I'm sure you've had spinach dip many, many times before. Usually it's made with sour cream, and in this case I'm going to substitute the tofu for sour cream. Now, there are vegan sour creams that you could buy, but in a case like this where you're not really going to tell the difference between the sour cream and the tofu, because the tofu has way less calories, less fat, and is just overall healthier for you, I like to use tofu in something like this. So I'm just going to open up my package here. And then the first thing we're going to do is blend the tofu. So I'm just going to throw it in my blender. And I'm going to puree it until it's smooth and creamy like sour cream would be. Okay, so that's done. So I'm going to transfer this to a bowl. And then the rest of the recipe is pretty simple. We're just going to add some onion soup mix. And again, just always check the ingredients to make sure that what you're using is vegan. And then I'm going to add some frozen chopped spinach that I have thawed, and I've squeezed out all the excess water from it. And then we're simply just going to mix this together. And it's just as simple as that. Easy spinach dip made with soft tofu, healthy, delicious. The only thing that I would suggest is that, again, with any kind of tofu, I suggest you put it in the fridge for at least an hour just to let those flavors absorb. You could use this right away, but I do highly recommend letting it sit for a little while in the fridge just for all those flavors to incorporate and get absorbed in there. And serve this with chips, with vegetables, whatever you like. But I guarantee you that if you serve this to your friends and family, they'll never ever guess that this was made with tofu. So now I want to show you what to do with firm silken tofu. I really like to use firm silken tofu in desserts, and today is no exception. I'm going to be making creme brulee with this. So again, I'm going to be using my blender. I often use my blender when I'm working with silken tofu. So I'm just going to cut my package open. I'm going to throw this in my blender. And I'm going to puree this until it's smooth. Okay, now to this, I'm going to add some sugar, some soy milk, some vanilla extract, and then I'm also going to add some fresh vanilla bean. So I've got half a vanilla bean pod, and then I'm just going to scrape out the seeds with the tip of a knife. Okay, so now I'm just going to blend this a little bit more. And lastly, I'm going to add some cornstarch. And I'm just going to blend again until everything's well incorporated. Okay, so my mixture is ready to go. So all I'm going to do is now I'm going to pour this mixture into 4 ramekins. And I'm going about halfway up here. So now what you have to do is you put the ramekins in a rectangular baking dish. And then pour boiling hot water into the pan until it's about 2/3 of the way up the sides of the ramekins. And you want to be careful not to actually get any water into your dishes. Okay, so that's about 2/3. Okay, so now these are ready to go in the oven. They will go in a 325-degree oven for 30 to 40 minutes or until they feel set when jiggled. So I've taken my creme brulee out of the oven. They were in for about 40 minutes. And now I'm simply going to take them out of this baking dish, and I'm going to place them on a wire rack to cool down completely. So I'm going to leave these on the cooling rack to cool completely. Then once they've cooled down, I will put them in the refrigerator and chill them for at least 4 hours. And then when I'm ready to serve them, just before that, I will put on some sugar and I'll use a culinary blowtorch to caramelize the sugar on top. So there it is, creme brulee using firm silken tofu. So the last recipe that I want to show you using silken tofu is I'm going to make butter tarts. And I'm using the silken tofu to replace the eggs that would normally go in butter tarts. So what we're going to do is open our package of tofu. And once again, I'm going to be pureeing my tofu in the blender. Okay, so I'm just going to transfer my tofu to a bowl now. Okay, so now to this tofu, I'm going to add corn syrup, brown sugar, vanilla extract, and this is melted vegan margarine. And then I'm just going to stir everything together. Okay, and our filling is ready to go. So I made some dough ahead of time and I put them into my muffin tins here, and then I've also lined these with some pecans and raisins. Now you can line these with whatever you'd like. Some people like to put shredded coconut in there. You might like a different kind of nut, or you just might want to have them plain. So now all I'm going to do is I'm going to fill my little tarts up with the filling. And I only want to go about 2/3 full with these because as they start to cook, they will rise up a little bit and you don't want them bubbling over. So there are my butter tarts all ready to go into the oven, and these will go in a 350-degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. So I just took my butter tarts out of the oven, and now I'm just going to gently take a knife around the edge and very gently pop these out onto a wire cooling rack. Okay, so there are my finished butter tarts. Now they do need to cool down here for a little while before I eat them because I'm sure that filling is really hot right now. But I tell you, these smell delicious and I can't wait to try them.